Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back, and welcome to episode 2 of Tattooing, where we're going to talk about the planning and preparation. So if you missed episode 1, make sure you go check that out, where we talked about deciding what you want. We went through 5 aspects of figuring out if you actually want a tattoo, and kind of some tips and tricks about how to figure out what exactly you want. That's probably the most common thing I hear from people is like, yeah, I love tattoos, I want one. I don't know what I want. So make sure you go check that out if you have no idea. And if you know what you want, now we kind of get into the nitty gritty sort of stuff. You don't just go in, get it done. There's a little bit more to it if you want to do it, in my opinion, well. And today we're going to talk about the planning and kind of preparation and 5 things that fall into that stage. Now that you know what you want and you kind of have an idea of what that style is going to be of the tattoo that you want, this is when you're going to start to find your artist. So you might have a lot of options. If you're in like a city, you might have, not so much. You might have to travel, whatever it might be. This is when you're going to start to look around to see who actually does that style of tattoo that you want, and then find an artist that you kind of vibe with, and where you check out their stuff and you're like, man, that's sweet. Like that's the style that I want. Look through their old work, see what they've done, and see if it connects with you and it connects with kind of the style of tattooing that you want to get done. If it's something super basic like writing or script or like that kind of stuff, you're probably pretty safe for the most part. But if it's something a little bit more intricate of like a full kind of half leg sleeve or a sleeve or something like that, you're going to want to make sure that your artist can do the style that you want it to be done in. Number 2, once you find that artist, figure out their cost and then start to budget. Tattoos aren't cheap. If you're going to want to get a lot done, you're going to have to budget it out and kind of figure it out. So find out before you kind of go in and book the appointment. I would try to figure out how much it's going to cost you first. See if it's realistic, because then you can kind of have a ballpark range of like, okay, if I save up this much for the next, from each paycheck for the next 2 months, then I'll be able to afford this big of a piece kind of thing. And then go in, book the appointment, and kind of go from there. But first, figure out how much it's going to cost you and make a budget accordingly. You would think that would be common sense, but I feel like I should bring it up just in case. All right, now number 3 is finding your resources. And this is where it gets kind of fun, because this is where you might have done this in the deciding what you want phase, but this is where you're going to really start to specify in of finding specific pieces of art or concepts or pictures or whatever it might be, going out yourself and taking pictures of things if it's something that you can find, and getting those references for it. A lot of people use other people's tattoos as references. And I've noticed this, of people will go into their artist, or like I've had friends that they'll find a tattoo on like Pinterest, Instagram, whatever kind of thing. They're like, oh, this is what I want, and go in. I can't speak for artists by any means. I'm not a tattoo artist, but I would probably not be super chill with that, of like just mimicking someone else's piece. You know what I mean? So I would try to find pieces of like art or ideas to bring in so that your artist can put their personal spin onto it, just because I feel like that would be more fun for them. And you want your artist to have fun, because then it's going to produce good work. But yeah, by all means do it, but I would be open to the idea that your artist probably is going to want to put their own spin onto it. And that's something to keep in mind. I mentioned this last time, of like, what you have in your mind is always going to be subject to change. You're not the artist. Unless you draw it out yourself and then they stencil it and put it on kind of thing, it's probably going to come out different, and you need to be cool with that. If you're a huge perfectionist, tattoos might not be for you. But if you find an artist that you trust and you're like, yeah, they're going to make my idea even better with the artwork that they do, then you're golden. And that's always been the case with me. And I talked about this last time, of like the guy who's done all of mine, shout out to Jerry. I'll come in with ideas, and then when he makes the art, it always is better than what I had in my mind. So then it makes me stoked, and I'm hoping that he has fun coming up with it and putting his own twist onto things. So I would try to be cool with that and not take other people's tattoos and use that as a reference. Something you might want to think about. All right, and lastly, in planning and preparing, contact your artist. This is be prepared to wait. I would warn you from going into places and try to find somewhere where it's like, I can get in now. That might work out. Like, there is a place in Kelowna here that I know I like what they do. And every now and then on their Instagram, they'll be like, hey, like, we have time if someone wants to come in. that's like, make sure you've done the previous steps, and then if you happen to get a walk-in appointment, awesome. But be prepared to wait and be cool with that and expect that. That's probably going to be the case. Tattoo culture is huge right now, and most artists are going to have wait times, so just be cool with that and be prepared for that. It's something that's going to be on you forever. You shouldn't be in a rush to get it done. Like, just take your time. Some people might have like a month wait time. Some people might have like 6 months wait time. It is what it is. Like, just be chill with it and make sure that, it's going to be worth it. If you've done everything in episode 1 and you've done everything that we've talked about today and you're like planned, prepared, and stoked, and you found your artist and everything, you should be fine with that wait period. If you're not, maybe think back to these other things and be like, am I really stoked on this piece and this artist and everything that kind of comes along with it? And when you've contacted your artist, the reason that I say like do the references to everything first is be prepared. Be prepared with like your budget. Be prepared with what you want done. Know what you're going in there for. Everything should be planned, prepared, set, and ready in your mind when you contact your artist and you're like, hey, let's do this, and then go from there. Have it figured out first. Again, like I said, it's going to have subject to change because they're the artist unless you're drawing it out yourself, but know generally of like what you want and what's going on when you actually contact your artist. Don't be like, hey, I want a tattoo, and they're like, what do you want? That would drive me nuts if I was a tattoo artist, and I'm sure it probably isn't super fun for them either. So something to keep in mind. That's it for planning and preparing. So now you know what you want for episode 1. You figured it out. You've planned, you prepared, you've budgeted, you've found your artist, you've contacted your artist. So what's next? This is where things get fun. On episode 3, what we're going to talk about is actually preparing your skin. So we're going to get into kind of the nitty-gritty of skincare tricks, getting the skin kind of ready, all of these sorts of things of what I think will help make your tattoo experience as best as possible. You don't want to go in, banged up with a bunch of cuts and scratches and skin's dehydrated and all of these sorts of things. So on the next episode is where we're going to get into that, of things that you can do that are going to make your skin actually take the ink better, and just general skincare tips, basically. If you have nice skin, it's going to help. So episode 3, that's what we're going to talk about, is preparing your skin. So now that you've, maybe you contacted your artist, you got it all figured out, and you have this sort of wait period of how, like a couple months or whatever it might be, this is when you can start, keeping in mind of what you want to do to make sure that that skin is ready and, you're good to go. And then after that, we'll start talking about like things to do the day before, things to do the day of, stuff like numbing cream, if you should use it, stuff like painkillers and all this sort of jazz. Spoiler alert, don't. Just own it. Enjoy the feeling of it, as weird as that sounds, but embrace what it is. Have some respect for the culture. In my opinion, like, you shouldn't be rubbing a bunch of weird creams all over to numb yourself out. Just own it. Like, embrace it. There's a couple things that I think will help because they're just helpful in general, but don't, after you've planned all that, like you've planned it, you've booked your appointment, whatever, don't go out buying numbing creams and shit. I've also heard from people that it makes it so that the ink doesn't take as well. So avoid that kind of nonsense, but we'll talk more about that next time. So make sure, if you haven't seen episode 1, go back, check that out. Like, subscribe, don't miss out on the upcoming ones. If you just want skincare tips, despite if you're getting tattooed, pay attention from now on, because the stuff that we're going to talk about is going to be beneficial for people just in general, but it'll be especially helpful for those people who are going to get inked. This is probably the worst chair to sit on. Super noisy. All right, until the next one, see ya.